it really is a great pleasure on behalf of the UK Chief of Defence Staff to welcome you to Exercise Steadfast Defender and the Distinguished Visitors Day. And this is the Alliance's flagship exercise for 2021. Exercise Steadfast Defender brings together thousands of members of the NATO alliance across 2 continents, demonstrating our commitment and resolve and the extremely strong bonds between Europe and North America. It is about NATO highlighting the strength of our multilateral approach, reassuring partners, and demonstrating interchangeability and interoperability, and obviously deterrence and defence in the Euro-Atlantic. Importantly, Exercise Steadfast Defender is focused on the reinforcement of continental Europe from North America. It demonstrates the value of North America and Europe working together, and it will strengthen the readiness and deterrence posture of Allied command operations through the rapid deployment of reinforcement from North America, movement across the European continent, and integration of multinational troops. This is the first large test of NATO's adapted command structure, including NATO's 2 newest commands, Joint Force Command in Norfolk, Virginia, and Joint Support and Enabling Command in Ulm, Germany. It highlights the rich tapestry of the NATO alliance, a maritime live exercise being led from Norfolk, Virginia, exercise commanders and a maritime component commander aboard the USS Mount Whitney, with assets from countries as diverse as Canada, the Netherlands, and Turkey, all supported by a NATO Joint Command in Germany. And today we're being supported by NATO headquarters in Portugal, a country which provides 3 NATO headquarters. This really does reflect the strength of the alliance. We are strong thanks to our breadth and diversity. And Secretary General, this really is a special delight to welcome you to our new aircraft carrier. In the same way that the UK provides its nuclear deterrent to NATO, that is the ambition with our aircraft carriers. And you really should see this as your carrier. And that reflects the UK and this exercise. We really are part of something bigger. NATO is implementing the biggest boost of its collective defence in a generation. This exercise takes that a step further, and it reinforces our collective defence. Secretary General.
Good morning, Minister Calviño, Air Chief Marshal Peach, General Walters, and Admiral Ratkin. It is a great pleasure to be here today, and it is really a great pleasure to be on board of the HMS Queen Elizabeth. And many thanks to Commodore Morehouse and Captain Essenheit. I repeat that. Many thanks to Commodore Morehouse and Captain Essenheit and the crew for hosting us today. This is really an impressive carrier, a powerful demonstration of the vital contribution that the United Kingdom makes to our alliance. And the first aircraft carrier in the world designed to operate 5th generation combat aircraft. From these decks, the Queen Elizabeth projects power to keep us all safe. She carries US Marines, she is protected by a Dutch frigate, and she is on her way to the Pacific. So this is a perfect example of how Europe and North America working together in NATO for our collective defense. This week, the Queen Elizabeth joins 20 ships from across the alliance taking part in exercise Steadfast Defender 2021. This is NATO's biggest exercise of the year, with 20 ships, 60 aircraft, 500 vehicles, and over 9,000 personnel from 20 allies, along with our partners Finland and Sweden. Together, we will test NATO's collective response to an armed attack on one ally. As we speak, NATO forces are deploying across the Euro-Atlantic area, from Spain to Romania, from the United States to Portugal. Over 5,000 maritime and air forces are training here off the coast of Portugal, testing NATO's ability to secure the Atlantic and defend strategic lines of communications. At the same time, our new logistics command in Germany is exercising the rapid movement of Allied forces and equipment across Europe. And our 4,000 strong high readiness force, led by Turkey, is deploying to Romania. So Steadfast Defender reflects NATO's resolve to deter and defend across the Euro-Atlantic area. This exercise also demonstrates NATO's adaptation. It is the first large-scale test of a new command structure with involvement of our Command for the Atlantic and our Logistics Command. Steadfast Defender strengthens NATO's deterrence and defense, which is a key part of our work on NATO 2030. To keep our line strong, we need to continue to train in all domains, at sea, in the air, on land, in space, and in cyberspace. Let me thank the men and women who have come across the alliance from North America and Europe to take part in this exercise. Steadfast Defender shows that we stand together in a more unpredictable world and sends a clear message that NATO is ready to respond to any threat from any direction. So then I'll hand it over to you, Minister Cavignon, please.
Thank you very much, Jens, dear Secretary General, Air Chief Marshal Peach, General Claude Walters, and First Lord of the Admiralty. It is really a privilege to be here today on the Queen Elizabeth. Portugal is a very proud member of the two longest standing alliances in the world. The second longest standing alliance in the world is NATO. For over 7 decades, NATO has played an extraordinary role for Portugal as well. The oldest, longest standing alliance in the world dates from 1386 and it united Portugal with England and the Treaty of Windsor. I'd like to say a couple of words about each of those. Starting with NATO, over the 7 decades of NATO's existence, it has shown remarkable capacity to adapt to the times, to adapt to new challenges. And the new challenges that it is facing today are related to a new geopolitical environment that we've been living in over the past few years. Very clearly, if you want to reach Romania, which is one of the objectives of this exercise, if you want to be able to support Romania, you need to be able to secure the Atlantic, you need to be able to secure the sea off of the Portuguese coast where we are now. We are very much aware that part of this shifting landscape that we are living in is a new centrality for the Atlantic in our alliance. We have new access routes to the Atlantic from across the Arctic, from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean, from there to the Atlantic. We have new lines of vulnerability in the Atlantic as our societies are more digitalized. We have a range of new threats in the Atlantic that we must be capable of responding to. And in this exercise, the Portuguese Navy and the Portuguese Air Force is very proud and pleased to be able to work with allies in demonstrating and testing the capacity to secure the Atlantic. On the first alliance that I mentioned, the oldest alliance, the alliance of 1386, this morning, chatting with Air Chief Marshal Stuart Peach, we remarked about how so many changes had occurred in history, but how also there had been some constant factors throughout history. And certainly geography has changed very, very little compared to what it was back then. And the point that I want to make about that is simply that as we look at this new centrality of the Atlantic today, and as we respond to it in our NATO structures, we are also doing what those old allies from 1386 were thinking of, which is supporting each other and helping each other in securing what are vital interests in a complicated and threatening world. Much has changed, some things have remained constant. Above all, for Portugal, what has remained constant is the value that we attach to working with our allies. So it truly is a privilege today for me to be here on the Queen Elizabeth, on this magnificent new ship, which I would like to congratulate the British Navy for. And it is a privilege also for the Portuguese Navy and the Portuguese Air Force to be working with NATO allies on this exercise. Thank you.
Secretary General, Minister, First Sea Lord, Saka, fellow Admirals and Generals, good morning, and good morning everyone. First of all, it's a great honour for all of us to be on HMS Queen Elizabeth today as part of this exercise. You've all heard about the scope of this exercise and the importance of it to the Alliance. To the men and women supporting the exercise on behalf of the Alliance, on behalf of the Military Committee, the Chiefs of Defence, I say you are part of something bigger, as the First Sea Lord said, and you are part of something together. The geography matters. The Minister's made it very clear. I would like to pay tribute to the Chief of Defence of Portugal, who's here today, for his really strong focus on the Atlantic, and the new Portuguese Atlantic Centre in the Azores is going to be important for our understanding. This ocean matters to the Alliance. Therefore, we are right to support the freedom of navigation, the freedom of movement across the sea lines of communication, and of course the very presence of this task group demonstrates the poise and ability of this alliance to respond. So thank you to all the men and women on the exercise. But this carrier is something more. It reflects modern technology, but also the service proud of its heritage, the Royal Navy, proud of its history, and proud of working together with the Royal Air Force and the US Marine Corps, as you see before you today. In 1975, as a young officer, believe it or not, I was deployed forward to support a NATO exercise in HMS Ark Royal. And 46 years later, I'm very proud as the chairman of the Military Committee to be here on HMS Queen Elizabeth to support a NATO exercise. So as the Minister said, some things have not changed, but the Alliance has adapted. And when you meet the young men and women from all nations on this magnificent aircraft carrier, and the men and women who fly the aeroplanes, whether they're fixed wing or rotary wing, you'll realize that working together, we are stronger. And so as an alliance, we continue to adapt, as the Secretary General said. And I am constantly impressed by the quality of those young men and women who serve all of our nations. And you'll see that today. And that is a really important message for those who wish us harm. And thank you for being here today. And I now hand the floor to the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe.
Secretary General, Minister, Chairman Peach, First Sea Lord, Commodore, Captain, sailors, and most importantly to all the great citizens that represent Portugal and all the great sailors that represent the Queen Elizabeth. I thank you for what you've done to generate peace, and I thank you more so for what you'll do in the future. And if I could, I would like to deviate from the script for just a second to acknowledge one tremendous individual who has been very, very responsible for a very long time for generating peace. As was just mentioned, the current chairman of the military committee woke up one morning 50 years ago and decided to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And from that day to this very moment, many of us have had the good fortune to know Stu Peach for the vast majority of his time that he served in the military, focused on generating peace and securing peace not only across Europe, but globally. And it was years ago and months ago when we would communicate and say to ourselves that, Stu, your retirement's coming up and it's years away. And as time has gone by, it's months away. And as we stand here today, his retirement is imminent after a half a century of service to generating peace. And I know of no greater patriot that exists on planet Earth that has done more for peace and security than Stu Peach. And I would ask that you join me in a warm NATO round of applause for his great service and his soon retirement. Well, many of you have heard about Steadfast Defender, and it is glorious. It is the largest NATO exercise in 2021, and it's, more importantly, the most complicated and complex exercise that we will embrace in NATO for 2021, as evidenced by the launch and recovery of those glorious F-35s aboard the QE. It is our goal to test the capability of all of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines from the lowest tactical level, the best tactical level, all the way to the senior command level. And here today on the Queen Elizabeth are all of our component commanders. And it is our goal to make sure that as we start with Joint Forces Command Norfolk and United States Commander 2nd Fleet on the eastern seaboard of the United States, and connect with the NATO Maritime Commander in Europe and the commander of 6th Fleet, and connect with Joint Forces Command Naples, and connect with all of the component commands that are responsible for generating peace. As this Steadfast Defender tests our mettle from the eastern coast of the United States to secure the Atlantic, to secure the Mediterranean, and to go in and work with our NATO response force and our very high readiness joint task force as we work in Europe all the way through Romania. Our goal is solely to improve the readiness of our forces. We want to wake up tomorrow more resilient, more responsive, and more lethal than we were yesterday in all domains: air, land, sea, space, and cyber, at all levels, from the tactical level to the young troop, all the way to the colonel level who commands ships, all the way to the senior level who bear the responsibility to make strategic decisions. One of the things that we continue to prove to ourselves is this: if you practice hard, your security is better. And our goal throughout all of this is to ensure that we protect the 1 billion citizens that we swore to protect, and we generate greater peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Larissa Brown from The Times. A question for Secretary General and Chairman Peach, if possible, please. President Lukashenko has said in the last few hours that the idea that they hijacked a plane is absolute lies, and has accused the West of waging a hybrid war. I'm just wondering what your response is to that. Is that disinformation? And also, what's your assessment of Russia's role in this plane hijacking? Thank you.
First of all, what we saw with the forced landing of the Ryanair plane on its way from one NATO capital, Athens, to another NATO capital, Vilnius, is absolutely unacceptable. And NATO, together with many other actors in the international community, have strongly condemned that act, which is not only violating international norms and rules, but also putting in danger many passengers, and it is a direct attack on basic democratic rights, the freedom of expression and the freedom of free media. Because there is no doubt that the reason why this plane was forced to land was to actually arrest a journalist and his companion. And any other attempt to try to tell another story is just not based on facts. I think everyone can see what happened, and that when the plane left Minsk, then 2 people were arrested. So this just once again demonstrates the nature of the regime in Minsk, where they are willing to crack down and use outrageous actions like the forced downing of that plane to crack down on democratic opposition in their own country. Therefore, the North Atlantic Council, NATO, has strongly condemned this act of the Minsk regime. We call for an immediate international independent investigation. And I also welcome the fact that NATO allies, EU and others have implemented sanctions on Belarus to make sure that Belarus is have to pay a cost for this way of acting and behaving against a civilian airline with many passengers. I will not speculate about the role of Russia, except for saying that we have seen a pattern of behavior also from Russia over the last years, where they have been willing to use poisoning, cyber attacks, attempted coups against, for instance, Montenegro. So we have seen a pattern of behavior which is of great concern also when it comes to Russia.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. I would simply add from a military perspective that NATO, as a defensive alliance, not only follows the rules and norms that are set for the rules-based international order, but also the professional airmen and women of NATO that you see on this aircraft carrier and beyond, whether they're air policing or they're in radar control centres, they follow the rules that are set. So in this case, this matter falls to the International Civil Aviation Organization to resolve the facts and resolve what happened. But I assure everyone, on behalf of the Supreme Allied Commander, Europe, that the airmen and women of NATO follow the rules, the norms, and are highly professional, and we should all be very proud of them.
Good morning, Question Secretary General. If I may, a two-pronged question. A while ago, when we saw Turkey buying Soviet anti-missile systems, we witnessed a certain tension between NATO and Turkey. Now Turkey is a very important part, it will take a very important part on this exercise. Do you personally consider that tension, that dispute is sorted out in one way? The other one, we witnessed Vladimir Putin, as you just mentioned, having a very strong and provocative sometimes speech towards NATO. You think it's just a rhetorical approach, or he's measuring strength with NATO?
NATO's approach to Russia is what we call a dual-track approach. We need strong deterrence and defense, and this exercise, the Queen Elizabeth, everything we do together, is part of our strong deterrence and defense, and it sends the message to all potential adversaries. At the same time, we want dialogue, and for us there is no contradiction between deterrence and defense and dialogue. Russia is our neighbor. We need to strive for a better partnership with Russia, and therefore we work for dialogue. But even if we don't believe in an improved or better relationship with Russia in the foreseeable future, we need to talk to them. On issues like, for instance, arms control, we welcome the extension of the New START treaty, transparency, risk reduction related to military activities like, for instance, exercises. And that's also the reason why NATO is always transparent and predictable when it comes to military exercises like this one. So the message we are sending to Russia is a message of deterrence and defense, but also dialogue. And I regret the fact that NATO now has, for some time, tried to convene the NATO-Russia Council, which is a platform for dialogue with Russia. So far, Russia has not responded in a positive way. Then on the first part of your question, Turkey is an important ally. They participate in this exercise. They lead the High Readiness Force, which is now deployed to Romania. At the same time, there are concerns which have been expressed by allies related to different issues, the situation in the Eastern Med, and other places in the region. I have raised concerns myself, and of course, it's a well-known issue that several allies are concerned and have expressed concerns about the Turkish decision to buy S-400. I have conveyed those concerns myself in Ankara. We are trying to support and help to promote dialogue between allies on other systems than the S-400, and we will continue to do so because, of course, whatever we can do to try to solve that issue will be helpful for the whole alliance.